treat your Christian slaves really well. Or he writes to the Pope and tells the Pope how well Muslim slaves are treated and how the Pope should give them some money. So this is really involved in a diplomatic way, because the way the Hospitallers treat their slaves influences the way in which Christian slaves are treated abroad. At least that's how the Hospitallers perceive it. And occasionally there does seem to be specific examples where the Hospitallers have done some cruel or harsh punishments and Christian slaves are treated harshly as a result. So one of the examples is just after they take Malta, the Hospitallers keep hanging Christian renegades they capture from the masts of their ships and parading around the Mediterranean with them on. And as a result, whenever the Ottomans capture a Hospitaller, they do the exact same thing to them and hang them from the mast. Very quickly, the Hospitallers stop doing that, and the Ottomans stop doing it. Independent action by the slaves. 1757, the Cadi stops writing these letters for the master. This is him actually deciding, no, I'm going to stop being used by you because I want some changes in how slaves are treated. I want to change the conditions of our servitude. The reasons for all this links to the Great Conspiracy, which I'll be talking about in the next slide. And after the Great Conspiracy, slaves are treated far harsher. The actual ill treatment he's complaining about is slaves are banned from basically existing in isolation. They are chained in pairs. So if you want to do anything, if you want to leave the slave prison, you have to be chained to another slave, which they find quite annoying. Additionally, they are banned from having any personal possessions, especially writing implements, for fear that they're spies. And these things actually get changed. The Hospitaller master goes, all right, you don't have to be chained together, but you have to wear an iron ring on your leg so that you can be spotted as a slave from a distance. And you can have writing implements, we just get to read anything you write. So the situation actually changes for the better, for the benefit of the slaves, by the Cadi refusing to be used by the master as this kind of diplomatic tool. Spies. The fear of spies tends to be more prevalent than the slaves actually being used as spies. Whenever there's an invasion or a scare or somebody sees a boat that looks Muslim or Ottoman, they go, ah, there must be a slave who's spying and telling them what we're up to and telling them what defences we're building. And very occasionally that does happen. There are times where a couple of slaves will escape, and next time there's an invasion, the Ottomans have a pretty good idea of where all the castles are because the guy who escaped told them. But mostly this is a fear element. But there is actual evidence of communication between the slaves through their writing to Muslim states, to North Africa. Now, one of the reasons that the Grand Master never bans this communication is partly because he needs it. He wants, for ransoming people and organising ransoms, they need to communicate with abroad. Additionally, if he wants to make sure that Christian slaves aren't being mistreated, he wants his slaves to write and tell Muslim states, the whole role of the Cadi, to tell Muslim states that the slaves are being well treated. So there is a dialogue going back and forth. And during a couple of rebellions, there is evidence that the slaves have been in communication with North Africa and expect a ship to come and save them. So in 1531, just after the Hospitallers get Malta, a group of about 30 slaves capture a tower on the coast, expecting a ship to come pick them up. It never turns up, and the Hospitallers kick the door in, and torturing happens. Hiding on ships. Hiding on ships is it's very interesting, because these aren't slaves simply hiding in a barrel or hiding on the side of the boat. As soon as the boat leaves the Hospitaller harbour, they jump out of wherever they've been hiding, which is probably a barrel, and claim official sanctuary. Because Christian slaves in Muslim territory, if they get onto a Christian slave, have a right of sanctuary. They can claim sanctuary and the Christian ship will save them. The theory is that if the Christians don't do the same to escaping Muslim slaves, they won't be allowed to do the same to escaping Christian slaves. So for a period during the 18th century, if you could get onto a French ship and claim sanctuary, you're basically home free. And then the Hospitallers change the rules and decide that they'll just make sure they don't let their slaves onto ships. They'll just keep an eye on them and use hired labour to load the ships. The Great Conspiracy, 1749. This is where everything I'm talking about comes together. So this is probably, it doesn't actually happen unfortunately, but the conspiracy is really huge. The plan